Jim Gaffigan famously said that having 4 kids is a lot like drowning and then someone handing you a baby. Our guest can relate to that, but the good news for us is she's taken her near drowning experience to let 16 million people know they don't have to mom alone. She loves Fred Astaire, and she loves to sit and stare at a Texas sunset with her husband, Bruce. Her favorite movie may be Little Women, but she's made some big 9.5-pound boys. She's friends with DJ Tanner, and to prove it, she's got a full house with Quaid, Price, Watts, and Knox. Gang, settle in because you're right where you belong, listening to my friend, Heather MacFadyen. Hey, Heather.
Oh, my stars. I am tickled. You are correct. That was awesome. Best intro of my life.
Come on. Don't just say that.
I don't say those things lightly. That was amazing. Bravo.
Yes. That was the goal.
From one podcaster to another, you did your research.
I did it. I was very excited about that. I was talking with my wife about this. I went and I read the intro to my wife before, and my natural inclination is to want to debrief it immediately after, just so I can feel good about myself. I'm going to resist the urge. Let's do fact check it though, real quick.
They all checked out.
You do love Fred Astaire.
Yeah.
I made up that you love to sit and stare at Texas sunsets, but I bet you and Bruce like to do that.
My favorite thing is a sunset, and I'm very sad that most nights I can't see it from my house.
All right, so we nailed that. You are friends with DJ Tanner.
It's a weird, long, crazy story, but yes.
Amazing. CCB herself, Candace Cameron Bure.
CCB. Yeah, that's right. Candy Cane.
Love
the Queen of Christmas. Yes.
The Queen of Christmas. Well, I'm super excited to talk to you. And here's why, Heather, because I think that I am one of many husbands who doesn't have any idea what their wives are going through. And so I think today is just you just educating us silly men who maybe lack a little empathy and understanding. So I'd love for you to bring it today. So thank you. Let's talk. So Don't Mom Alone is your podcast. You've written a book called Don't Mom Alone. You've had 16 million downloads at last count, or do we pop a little higher?
This makes me very uncomfortable. Can we just say that? Because
no, let's lean into that.
I don't like talking numbers, but I do have an agency that asks me to give them numbers, they book ads for me. They're my So I have to know. So it's actually 21 million now.
20, gosh.
I know.
That is amazing.
That is not something I would ever correct anybody on, because honestly, you can toggle a little switch and the numbers change. So to me, it's just like, what are numbers? And didn't David get in trouble for counting? I just don't ever want to
that's a good point.
Keep track of things that God's like, I don't care. I care about the one.
Yeah.
And I had a great conversation with a gal yesterday at an event. She wrote me this, like, I'm going to put it on the video, but you're like a whole note.
Wow.
This is her family, and this is all that I've meant to her. That's what I care about, not 21 million. I don't care. The one.
That's amazing. Well, the cool thing is that is representative of many others. I mean, someone who actually takes the time to write a letter, that means it's really impactful, which represents, it has to be, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands who didn't write a letter, who really has been so impactful. So what is in that letter? I'm not asking you to tell us the content of the letter, but what's the thing? Like, you've been doing this between blogging and podcasting. What's the thing that you hear a bunch when people just say, "Oh, I just this. Thank you for fill in the blank." What is that thing?
Well, this one in particular, she has 4 boys. So I think that all moms are carrying a really heavy mental load. And I think that conversation is coming to the forefront more. And it's definitely, when you said help us husbands understand, I do think husbands in this generation are so helpful comparatively to their dads and their grandfathers, as far as presence, as far as contributing around the home and just sharing workload. But I don't think we could ever fully share the mental load. And so what I hear encouragement about is that I'm honest about when I'm having a hard time or feeling less than. And then I also keep the conversation focused on Christ and God and the Holy Spirit, like the full Trinity, if you will, of keeping fixed on that versus you need to do this so you get this outcome, which
Hmm.
is what they hear a lot on social media and from other friends. And I just think compared to other generations, we get more input on what we should be doing
Huh.
than any other. And so there's a constant weight of maybe today was hard. Maybe my kid is misbehaving because I'm not doing X, Y, and
Hmm.
Z. And so I think they feel relief when they listen to me say, there isn't a formula. God is bigger than all of it. Um, you
Hmm.
can trust that he loves your kids more than you do, which is hard to imagine. That no mistakes too far for him to redeem and restore. Like these
Yeah.
messages, I hope quiet their mind that is
Hmm.
overworking and then help them just grab that truth. If one little truth pops in their head that they can cling on to in the midst of that
Yeah.
like self-flagellating moment.
Right. It's you said something. You said the inputs of all the things they should do, and it's
Yeah.
interesting that word "should" is just I have a friend who says he says don't should your pants,
Yeah.
which I think is always pretty funny. But
And
like,
don't shit on me. That's what somebody
yeah,
has to
no,
don't
I
shit
like
on
that.
me.
Don't should on me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's so and it's whether somebody is saying this is what's interesting. And I ask you to fact check this, but I think especially to females, the all here are the things you could do. All the brain hears these are things I should do. All of a sudden, a piece of advice becomes a should, and should that's and then like of course you can't fulfill all of those, and so all you're viewing is a gap between who you are and the things in your mind that you should be doing. Is that
Yeah.
right? Is that how the brain takes it in?
Yeah, and I think we're I believe women bring order to
Yes.
chaos and we
Yeah.
bring beauty and these wonderful things to community and culture, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the home, family life. But I think that what can happen is when I see chaos or disorder in my family and I'm looking for a solution, I often will go to the internet or to a friend for advice, which is fine. But at the same time, I'm trying to get women to ask the Holy Spirit, get promptings from God, like help me with this child. Because
Mm.
one thing I have learned with 4 boys, I have 4 different versions of a boy. And
Yeah.
so in each journey that they've been on is unique because they have different classmates than the other one had class. I mean, they have a different teacher, even if it's at the same school. It's like I need my personal guidance from the one who made them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I take, like, let's say, Joey, you say, oh, yeah, my 10-year-old struggled with that. And this is what we did. I'm like, oh, okay. So I go home and I try that with my 10-year-old and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I feel like I failed or my
Interesting.
child failed. Not, well, you know what? I tried something and it didn't work.
Hmm.
That's not the message I hear. It's like,
Yeah.
see, there I failed again.
Hmm.
Versus if I ask God and I get his insight, then I might be like, maybe I'll second guess and say, maybe I heard wrong.
Yeah.
But the main thing I think we really have to lean into is what if heart is just part of the story?
Yeah.
What if it's not like, what if this challenge my child is going through or the frustration I'm experiencing is part of my journey of becoming, and it's not like easy
Hmm.
breezy beautiful is what we should expect every single day.
Yeah.
And to just like release that ideal
Yeah.
that we're all
That's
holding hands and singing kumbaya every day. I mean, there's going to be fights. There's going to
yeah.
be sibling clashes. That is
Yeah.
part of our reality.
It's funny, you wish, and I've said this before on the podcast, you hope for, you say, oh, I hope for, hard things for my kids. I want them to be resilient. And then when you get in the middle of it, it's terrible, right? It's just like you only want to wish it away. And Sissy Goff, who we both know, Sissy said on our podcast, she said the worry is an overestimation of the problem and an underestimation of ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
when there's such a payoff for our kids when they do overcome something difficult. And we know from experience, funny, we act like we don't, but we know that they'll get through it. Right. And when they do, that's a great thing for them to have gone through that. And so it's that whole concept of going through hard things is so silly that we wish it away, but we know how much better it makes us and makes us so much better so much more qualified to take the next test on. And that not just for our kids, but for ourselves as parents as well.
Well, and speaking of resilience, I saw, do you know Lisa Demore? She does
Mm-mm.
she's a counselor, but she's been writing some books on teens and girls. And anyway, she had a guest on her show, and she was just talking about a child's resilience is based on the parent's resilience. And the
Mm.
parent's resilience, particularly the mom, comes from how supported she is.
Huh.
And so ultimately, it goes back to my heart for moms is that you are connected to one, it doesn't have to be 20 friends, one,
Yeah.
two, three people at most that really you could go to
Hmm.
in a moment of shame. You may have done something wrong as a mom. That's guilt. But shame is I am wrong as a mom.
Yeah. Right.
And someone you could go to, they know your heart, you feel safe. They're not going to beat you up with advice or condemnation. They're going to say, me too, if that's what you're looking for, identification. But they are your go to people.
Yeah.
So when you have that heavy mental load, you can offload
Yeah.
some of it in community, and that builds your resilience, which ultimately is what you want, which is your child's resilience. So to me, that's the motivator,
Hmm.
because sometimes moms won't do things or won't lean into why they're isolating from community unless the motivator is, well, this makes my kid better.
Yeah. Right.
Unfortunately, it's like, okay, well, if this makes my kid better, then I'll do the work to figure out, why am I not talking to people
Mm.
about my hard stuff or sharing or hiding in shame? Like, could I dig into that a little bit more?
Well, this goes back to your story, which I was fascinated to learn about when you started blogging, I think, in 2009, and then you started podcast in 2013, and you didn't rebrand to Don't Mom Alone until, was it, I believe, 2017? Is that right?
Yeah, 18.
And
Yep.
I would love to so my perception, Heather, was, okay, you've been in the game, like you've been writing, you've been dispensing wisdom, but you had already had four boys when you realized this very big thing that you just talked about. When you had, I want to tell you, waiting for chicken strips. I'll let you tell the story
Yeah.
when this all happened. But the fact that even for somebody who was a best of the best, dispensing wisdom, encouraging people, all of a sudden you realized, okay, there's something really missing here. Will you tell a little bit of that story?
Yeah, I'd been writing online on God-centered mom. I mean, how weighty is that? Um,
I'm the guy. Did you introduce yourself as that? Hi, I'm God centered mom.
well,
Just
people
yeah.
started calling me that. I was thinking it was this like humility posture of, I'm not child-centered, I'm not self-centered, I'm going to choose to center my mothering on God. Well,
Right.
instead, like I even have a friend who jokingly would call me Mother of God, like as a joke.
Oh,
But that's how heavy that felt. We're talking
that
like
is very
add to the
heavy.
load of like normal motherhood pressures, and then I'm writing on a blog called God Centered Mom. Okay, it's too much. So in that vein, I slowly isolated. I also
Mm,
had four young boys who you cannot control. You can't control one. You can never control any children, but you
right.
boys, there's a exponential energy factor that happens when men and boys get together, and it's just overwhelming. I couldn't be in public with them. And then
Mm,
even if I was with a group of girlfriends without kids, I just didn't talk about what was hard or where I was feeling shame. And so, yeah, it was in a chicken. It wasn't Chick-fil-A because it was Sunday. It's Bubba's here in Dallas. But
Bubba's.
I had a full panic attack. I know we're laughing,
Wow.
but like,
Yeah.
what else can you do? You got to laugh. And this
Right.
is,
If you
I
don't
was
laugh, you'll
listening.
cry.
Yeah, I was listening to something the other day. People didn't talk about this for
Mm,
so many years. So to make it, to normalize it, when you just have this overwhelming feeling of anxiety and it doesn't make sense based on your environment. I was in a car, safe in my car. All my kids were safe, but I was so overwhelmed and crippled with anxiety that I just felt like I had to get out. Like my whole body was in fight or flight, and I needed to do something. And so I
mm,
started seeing a counselor. I started digging into this. Why am I isolating? And slowly just rebuilt community, safe community, did the work through 12 step with my community group, did some inner healing prayer with some great friends, and just a lot of those pieces came together to get to a point where I could be okay saying I'm not okay.
yeah. Which had to have been, which is hard for anybody but you're God-centered mom. Right. I mean, that had to be, was that difficult? I mean, you're very authentic. You're very honest and you don't hide much, but was that hard to finally say, I'm not okay?
Well, it was this season of blogging where sometimes people, like, it felt like people were creating problems so they could write about them and get attention.
Uh,
So there was a little bit of like, are people even going to believe me? And then I did have a friend, she was like, call me whenever you feel like yourself again, or your depression is better or whatever. And like
wow.
dismissed the whole thing as if
Oh, she
it was
seems
a
fun.
made up. Yeah.
Well,
So that was a hard, like, I'm putting myself out here and then it's actually making things worse. But I
mm,
had to realize, like, pushing through the healing, gathering people who are on this similar journey or interest of a growth mindset, that has been worth it.
mm-hmm.
Recognizing, oh, that friendship actually wasn't the depth or what I needed. That
Yeah.
was just a fun show pony of a friendship.
Mm,
And so the depth that I've found in other friendships has been so much more meaningful, 12 years later.
yeah. What is it like? Just very super practically for. I think a lot of people want the results of community and doing things with other people, but it's a hard first step for maybe a mom who's listening who says, "Hey, I want that, but I don't know how to go about it." What's a very practical way to go make adult friendships for moms out there who may feel a little bit isolated but recognize they need some community?
I do think we need to evaluate what's going on in us.
Yeah.
I do think we have to take inventory of past friendships and relationships and look for themes, look for feelings and thoughts and actions, and own our part in friendships, because until we heal that piece, we'll continue to follow those same patterns. And that's
Hmm.
12-step language.
Yeah.
Whether it's addictions, just take all of that and put it on relationships. Like,
Huh.
we have to own our piece.
Yeah.
And then we also have to say, what am I expecting out of these relationships that maybe I'm not going to God for, and like
Hmm.
centering myself in his love and his acceptance and my worth and identity in him. And because I think if we over need from people, that's
Yeah.
like red flag city for, I mean,
Right.
yeah.
And you were a little bit on the opposite side where it was you were fully, I mean, spent a bunch of time with God, very centered on God, but you lacked that community side, right?
Well, I just think I really cared a lot what people thought of me.
Yeah.
And so the hiding was, I can't let you see I have faults and I have failures. And so I masked and I hid. And so I had to come to grips with, even though I was spending time with God, I hadn't healed
Hmm.
the belief I had about who I am, and
Hmm.
needing my identity and worth to come from Him alone and not from
Yeah.
other people's opinions and approval of me. And so I had to do that deep work so that I could be a more set free friend
Hmm.
who, we can have a conversation and you may be in a hard place and I can be okay, but I don't need all of my needs met by you.
Yeah.
I get to be with you. I get to connect with you. Um, I think we don't often do that work to figure out what's
Yeah.
going on in us.
I'd love this. I loved this. We're going to talk about kind of stages of mothering, but you recently said, you talked about your greatest lesson over the last 18 years. And I thought this was really, it's actually encompasses a bunch of what you've said. You said this is your greatest lesson over 18 years of being a mom. You said, do what you can to heal your past and present wounds so that you can be the healthiest version of yourself, not necessarily so your kids will turn out better, but so you can enjoy the motherhood journey as much as possible. So again, like not an outcome based approach. There's so much about self help there that I want to talk about. Um, and then going back to some of your wounds. So will you tell us about that and maybe the self-care that you need to go back and heal those past and present wounds, and then what it really means to enjoy the motherhood journey?
I tell people that the gift of motherhood is that it brings all your junk to the surface. And it may be with your first kid. It may be in the first month. It may not be till your seventh kid. I have talked to moms who it was, okay, I had my seventh kid and I
Wow.
finally hit the end of myself.
Mm.
But it's leaning into that. If you're like, man, I have hit the end of myself and I don't know what's going on in me, that's when we get curious. We
Yeah.
include others. I mean, I'm such a proponent of the healing work that God has to offer through prayer, but some of that has to be brought to the surface through counsel, whether it's EMDR or whether it's a 12-step program, whether it is just sitting with community and talking these things through if you have those safe people. But I heard someone say, now I have no scientific proof, I have no journal reference here, but at 35, there's some layer in your brain that thins, that brings any kind of past harm or trauma to the surface.
Interesting.
So you may have been like plowing through life, marriage, and then you're hitting this stage of parenting and like all this stuff is coming up. You're like, where is this coming from? Why am I so depressed? Why am I so anxious? Why am I, whatever the extreme emotion that you're feeling is, it's like, well, let's get curious about that, because feelings are indicators. They don't get to be dictators. We need to like analyze, like, why is this feeling so predominant? Sadness, pain, anger, what is behind it?
Yeah.
And I think as moms, because all of our energy gets put into the little people and making them happy and making sure everything's, you know, copacetic and like beautiful on Instagram, and you've got the family pic for the Christmas card, that we just keep shoving the emotions down instead of saying, huh, this keeps coming up, or this thought keeps coming up, or this feeling keeps coming up. I wonder why. And when I say do the work, I mean, I think that's very individual.
Sure.
But it takes, there's usually a barrier to entry for people of like, whether it's they have a phone call, the phone number of a counselor, but they just haven't dialed it yet or scheduled that appointment or gone to that meeting. I mean, there is, you have to get to the point where you are personally motivated to take action and get that help and healing. And this is not like, even in that quote you just did of what I learned in 18 years, it says healed my wounds. And someone commented, I think it's an ongoing process. I'm like, absolutely. I wasn't saying like, done, I'm fixed, everything's perfect. Like, your kids get older and even more stuff comes up. Things that you thought, oh, I dealt with that. No.
Yeah. Still keeps coming back. And then what is it like on the, as you're, again, not that there's this magical other side, but you say at the end, so you can enjoy the motherhood journey as much as possible, which I like the as much as possible, because it's just like extracting what you can. It's the difficult stuff that you may not appreciate in the moment. You may actually enjoy that in retrospect. Yeah. But what is that like to enjoy that motherhood journey?
I think, again, it is relieving that load.
Yeah.
When your mental, the weight of, they're just things that have to be done. I mean, the emails that I get, I've 4 boys in 3 different schools. Okay. There are just things that have to be done. But if on top of just the to-dos, I also have, I'm failing, we're missing out, I am not doing everything I could be doing. Like, oh my gosh, did you see how she looked at me? I think that she just made a comment that I'm a bad mom because I'm not at so-and-so's game and I'm at this game. Like, I have to stop those thoughts.
Yeah.
Take them captive. We're going to use biblical vernacular. And I have to replace them with truth right then. And that practice helps me then be fully present at the whatever I'm at, instead of beating myself up or future thinking. Or I've talked to so many moms of 4-year-old boys who are like, oh my gosh, she's going to go to prison. I'm like, okay, let me give you some truth. I've interviewed David Thomas, and he says he meets with more parents of 14 and 14-year-old boys than any other age group, and that it's very normal for you to see extreme behaviors in 4-year-old boys. And if you think about it, it wasn't until like the last few generations that boys were required to go to restaurants at 4 years old or be in these places where they're supposed to sit and be quiet. Like 4-year-old boys could just go be. And so he's not, there's nothing wrong with, I mean, there, you know, kids could have differences that we get diagnosed, but on the norm, there's nothing wrong with him if he's has struggles with impulse control and aggression and angry outbursts and raging. That is all within, and maybe even more because he's overstimulated by all the things that are in the world. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
it just helps to like calm that mom's brain down so then she can enjoy the journey more because she's not
Yeah.
thinking something's wrong with my child. I'm doing something wrong because it's like learning those developmental norms just quiets that voice and then you can
Yeah.
enjoy him a little bit more. Oh, look how wild he's being. Such a wild little 4-year-old boy. Yeah.
Well, it is so comforting to know, like, oh, okay, this is just what it is, and we've I think we're both big fans of David and Sissy, but their resources are fantastic. Where you walk through, and be like, oh, that's why they talk about Sissy talks about the narcissistic years as a teenage girl, and I thought, okay, I have a daughter who's 13. I relate to what she's saying there.
Yeah.
This is not her. This is something that she's like that not only that she's going through, but something that she actually needs to go through.
Yeah.
This is part of her process. This is a very good thing for her to be well adjusted as she grows.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned you mentioned the thought of the isolating ideas, and so your book Don't Mom Alone in 2021, which was, I think this, Heather, was just such a, the way you laid this out was so brilliant in talking about these isolating ideas and these connecting truths.
Mm.
Will you tell us a little bit of that? But before I get into the question, will you tell us a little bit about that concept? These, as a mom, this whole concept of an isolating idea, but then the connecting truth that goes with it.
Yeah. So when I asked God, should I write the Right Where You Belong book first or Don't
Huh.
Mom Alone? And this was in 2019. And I drew up some boundary lines that I explain in Right Where You Belong, like that concept of decision making. And he was like, you have all these podcast episodes, but you don't have a resource you could hand a weary mom.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, I'll write Don't Mom Alone. Well, hadn't written a book proposal on this book. I hadn't thought about it. I just had all these episodes. I was like, well, what is going to be in this book?
Hmm.
And then I thought, okay, I can't have coffee with every mom. So what would I tell her over coffee? So I started sharing my stories and I realized, okay, I don't have all the answers, but I could analyze, why did I choose to isolate from community? And a lot of it was my thinking, which we've discussed in this episode. Like, what was I thinking that was saying you can't be with these people?
Hmm.
And so then I broke it down into different relationships. So my relationship with God, my relationship with others, my relationship with my kids, because that's an important relationship that we're often like ignoring, that
Sure.
we actually might want to be in right relationship and not mom alone and with our kids. They become this like idol slash trophy instead of a relationship. Anyway, so when I was thinking through it, I was like, okay, let's have these ideas I was thinking, and then what would actually be true that would bring connection. And so, yeah, those just came to mind.
I love that.
And then we went through a pandemic. I was writing about it, and the whole world was isolated. I was like, well, here we go. I guess God knew something when I asked him.
Well, I do love that thought of, because we just accept things as they come to us. So these thoughts that come to you, and I love you talk about feelings. I never heard the way you said it. They're indicators, not dictators, which I really, really like that. But we get these ideas that come to us that we just accept. Oh, these are true. Oh, this is just how it is. And so I like how you take that. Like, let's give a name to that isolating idea, then connect a truth with it. So and again, this especially this, I think, for husbands to listen to. So wives, send this on to your husbands here, because I want to talk about 3 stages of motherhood, and you're in a very unique position where your oldest is Quade, right?
Yeah.
So Quade is 18, correct?
Yeah,
and he's a senior. Correct. He's applying to colleges. We're all praying that he doesn't go to the University of Texas, which would be a travesty if he did. That's okay.
It would be a miracle. It would be a miracle if he gets it. Then we'll have to be like, wow, God really has something for you.
Really
there.
wanted him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just get closer to Norman, Oklahoma than Austin, Texas, maybe. So, but I want to go through. So you've seen different stages. You're in that, that stage of, the high school years and the senior year. So will you talk through maybe three stages. The first, the kind of the baby, the toddler, the preschool years. And then I want to hear about the elementary to middle school years and then the high school years. But maybe in those, each of those stages, the prominent isolating idea that moms may be going through. So, and then what's that connecting truth that goes along with that? So let's start in those kind of baby to preschool years. What is the prominent isolating idea that you think that moms experience?
It is a physical time, like really physical, physically exhausting. And so often, if you have more than one, you might be pregnant and have a baby, toddler, or preschooler. So you're juggling a lot of physical needs, a lot of noise. There's a ton of love, lots of affection, but just everybody needing you all at once. And I said, it's like that song, There's a Hole in My Bucket.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, just, meet with God and fill up your bucket. And then you can just pour out all day with your kids. I'm like, there's not a bucket big enough. And so the imagery that a mentor gave me, she says, if you get a chance to have time with God, even if your kids are watching a cartoon and you read a verse or you say a prayer, it's not to fill up your bucket. It's to remind yourself that there is an ever-flowing, limitless river of love that you get to stand in today, and you get to invite your kids to join you. You get to invite the stranger, the neighbor, your husband. Like, this is not a source. You are not the source.
Yeah.
You are a part of being filled by the limitless source. And so I would say the isolating idea that keeps moms from going on dates with their spouse, from getting together with friends, from doing things that remind them of who God made them to be, is I have nothing left to give. I am completely depleted. And here's the truth. Yeah, you are a limited human being.
Yeah,
you
right.
This is, again, 12-step, like step 1 or 2. I'm a limited human being. I have my limits, and that's okay. And so I have to recognize, like, I cannot do all of the things.
Right.
One of my missions is to help moms of kids in this stage to not feel like they have to start a non-for-profit right now. You don't need to have a podcast. You don't need a line of children's clothing. If God has assigned you that, or if, there's choice for a lot of people, but there's not choice for a lot of people. Some people, this is not a choice, whether we have a job or not. But if you feel pressure from a culture that you are falling short of the measure of being this, millennial woman because you don't have 3 businesses while you're mothering, I want to relieve that pressure. Like,
that's so good.
If you want to do it, or if that's a hobby or whatever, but don't do it because you think you should. And if you're like, man, this is enough for me, that's great. That's great.
I just hope maybe for mom listening right now who's in that stage, just like you said, Heather, just relieve that pressure a little bit. That's what an important thing to just acknowledge. Hey, this is exhausting. Yes, it is.
And I didn't finish the truth. I guess I should say
the
whole thing. I'm a limited human being dependent on a limitless God. So
that's
believing
awesome.
and leaving the rest to Him, that you're not missing out, that you don't have to do all the things. Like, ask Him that day, what do I need? This is from Jamie Winship, who's my new favorite crush. I mean, I'm a happily married woman, but he is an amazing, if I had a spiritual crush right now, it's Jamie Winship. He would pray to God as when he was a police officer, when he was a CIA agent. What do I need to know? What do I need to do?
I've heard about him. Someone was telling me about that.
Unbelievable. Such a good. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? God, you are limitless. You know what my future holds. You know what blowout my child's about to have, or tantrum. What do I need to know? What do I need to do?
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, let's segue into kind of the school years, the elementary and middle school years. What for moms you've been through? You're in it right now too. So Knox is 11. Is that right?
I mean, I feel like you know more than Bruce on this situation.
I went down I do know one of them was born on 2/2/12, right?
That's
I knew
him.
that.
Yeah.
That's Knox. Look at that. Yeah, it's getting a little creepy. I'm sorry. That
creepy.
It's getting weird.
He turned double digits when it was 2/22/22.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it was a Tuesday.
Come on now.
You can't
Can't
make
make
that
that up.
Can't make that up. So I would say this stage, again, if all your kids are in the elementary, middle school years, this is your time to take a vacation because they'll remember it, because you won't have nap times, because it'll be such a bonding time. It's such a sweet time of connection. And I think it can be a sleeper time where we don't recognize how important the connection is. And so we busy ourselves with activities and we miss out on the chance that we have the most influence right in these years of our words, of our character development. And if we're going and blowing and trying to get, hey, Bobby, get your shoes, grab your, there's not connection time. And
Yeah.
so we miss that. And I think what happens is we think we should do all the things once again. So the isolating idea is I'm falling short of the good mom formula. There's a good mom formula where we have to be in this soccer league so that then he gets on this soccer team, so that then he gets a scholarship. It's like, what if your child's on his own unique journey with God? And what if his identity is to be a world famous soccer player? Nothing's going to stop God from making that happen.
Yeah.
And that's another Jamie Winship story that you'll have to look up, is his son was a skateboarder and they were in Baghdad and God made a way for him to be able to skateboard in the middle of the war in Baghdad. He can do anything. So there's not a formula. So leaning into like, God, what is your identity for this child? And so then you can release all of the cultural expectations and busyness to be helping that child with whatever unique path they're on. So instead of isolating yourself because you're so busy with keeping up this formula, connect the truth of I embrace my intention and I release this fear of imperfection. And I just am like, God, what do you have for our family?
Yeah.
And what matters to us, and lean into your family values in that season, and kind of just release all of those fears of, I think, even fears of missing out, fears of messing it up.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's I've thought you can think lately about this idea of full presence, and the you can mess a lot of things up and cover all of it with just your full presence. You know what I mean? Or you can do a lot of things right and you can actually mess that up without you being fully present. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like in the conversation, we think about our, obviously phones a bunch over here, but in the middle of a great conversation with your kid, like a glance at your phone while they're opening up to you can just crush that moment. Right.
Yeah.
But it's also okay. You mess a bunch up, but if you're really fully present with them, which I think what you're, really talking about, just not missing those years for the sake of busyness. And we've gotten, of course, we've gotten all caught in this trap. We've got caught. Maybe I'm caught in this trap at present. Well,
and we have to analyze, how are we in this trap? Okay, let's look at our calendar. Why are we doing all these things? Is this something that, can we all just take a second and pray? Like, Lord, what do you want us to put our time and energy into? And is this a yes or is this a no? Or is this, I'm doing this because I'm afraid that we'll miss something if we do it? Like,
that's a very dangerous exercise, Heather, to take an honest look at your calendar, because it'll force some things, and everything, it all feels necessary, but and again, we're in it. Like I am challenged by you because I don't really want to take an honest look at my calendar. It's a scary thing.
I always tell the boys, I'm like, one yes is actually like 3 or 4 yeses.
So right.
And when I say no to maybe a speaking thing or an event or something, I don't really look back.
Yeah.
I'm like,
exactly.
And by me not taking that seat, it might be a yes for someone else who that was really meaningful for them. I don't have to feel the weight and responsibility that all ministry is up to me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's all on you.
It's
not. I've noticed lately, this has been probably a very telling thing for me. I've had a couple people cancel on things on me over the last couple of weeks. And after they canceled, I thought, this is awesome. I just got an hour I didn't know I had. So this, and that's an indicator of overscheduling, right? Is that when you're relieved when someone cancels. Yeah, no margin. Exactly. All right. So high school, this may be the easiest or this may be the hardest question of all of these for you, because you're in the thick of it. You got a senior. I was talking with Heath Wilson, our co-founder, this morning. He has 2 seniors, and that's a hard, it's like I'm sure it's very easy to be like every meal, like, well, this is the last, this is the last October 26th that you have French toast before you go to college. You know what I mean? So what
Well,
is
I just
what
think
what is the
I
life
think this season, if I look at the whole season of high school, as far as if we're talking about community and isolating,
there? Yeah.
I think what is really hard in this season and the load that moms carry is it's your kid's story. And
Yeah.
you can no longer be like over coffee, like, oh my gosh, you won't believe what Bobby did.
Mm,
You can't.
yeah.
And my friends can't to me. And so I tell moms, like, and this is not the isolating idea. I'm starting to tear up, but I'm like,
Mm,
you need, this is when you need mentors. You
huh.
need women who have perspective, who have walked through it to the other side, because high school years are hard
Mm,
for them. I mean, they're under way more pressure than we ever were. I just even saw another statistic. I'm like, oh my gosh, these poor kids. And the phones are a huge part of it. We need Arrow. I'm going to sign up soon, okay?
Come on.
And then the other key relationship I think that has really served me in these years is the moms behind me, to be honest, because they are closer to remembering what it was like to be a high schooler. And they can share stories of, oh, this is what I did in high school, and
Huh.
this is how I got through it. And it's like, and there's such a voice of encouragement.
Yeah.
And I think having those perspectives, holding on to hope, the isolating idea that I think is great for the entire season of motherhood, even into raising adult children, is, well, this isn't a good idea, but this is what we think. I
Yeah.
am fully responsible for my child's outcome.
Yeah.
And the culture reinforces this. When something bad happens, whether it's a shooting or a horrible event, we often want to know about the child's parents,
Right.
because they're the source of how a human could do this evil. Not evil is the source of how this human could do this evil. Like the
Mm.
parents did something wrong. Or you think of the classic therapist line, tell me about your mother. Like the
Right.
source of, like, the joke is our moms are the
Gosh.
cause of all of our problems. So
Ugh.
I am fully responsible for my child's outcome and any issues they have and any future therapy conversations they have. And as I leaned into people's stories and as I analyzed it more, I realized, no, the connecting truth is I am important. This relationship matters, obviously, or else even in the secular world, they wouldn't see the connection between moms and kids. But I am not essential. And I know that word was used a lot during COVID, but I really, truly am not essential in the good plans God has for my child.
Huh.
Because I have friends, and I have one friend in particular I think of, Kat. Her mom passed away when she was 8 months old.
Mm.
Now, so her biological mom is no longer in her life. Did that mean, okay, story's over?
Right.
God can't work in your life. He can't do anything in your life. Your biological mom's not there.
Mm.
We grant the fact that, oh, other people can step in, you know, whether it was her aunts or her grandparents or a stepmother. Like, we're like, yeah, of course, they would all step in. Why don't we give ourselves that same grace when we haven't passed away?
Yeah.
Why do we say, oh, well, I'm here, so I've got to do it all and it's all up to me? It's like, can we release that and recognize we will do our part and it is super important and we do leave a mark? And also, the God of the universe that made our kids, who has a story for them, just like they have a story for you, is bigger than your failings and your wins. And he sees the whole thing and he's going to use everything because that's what he does. Like, can we release that piece? And so I think in high school years, when a lot's hitting the fan, you're like, you got to remember you're important but not essential.
That's so great. That's, again, all of the, I think a through line in all this is relieving a little bit of that pressure. Just take some pressure off. It's okay. And we know we perform better when we know, when we're relaxed and we don't have the pressure. So it's, I think I say perform, I'm gonna be careful of that word, but at the same time where we'll, you'll be more like who you would like to be as the pressure removes. It's kind of a paradox you have to work through. Last question for you. I didn't prep you for this, but I'm curious. We're the podcast is all about intentionality, how to help give people inspiration and tools to live out an intentional life. So with four boys. You have a senior and an 11-year-old on the other side. What is some within your home, within the MacFadyen home? What's an intentionality practice, whether you call it that or not, but something that that you all, the other people, could listen to and say, I'd like to implement that in our life. Something that you do to kind of implement intentionality in your family.
Well, I'm a big fan of not giving a formula, but
I like it.
I will say lean into what matters to your family. So what matters to Bruce and I that we've leaned into is fun, communication, and creativity.
Mm,
And a thing that was a part of his family growing up and was a part of my family growing up that we've implemented in our family. So again, it's not like forcing your spouse to do something that you think
right.
is important. They don't. This is like a communal decision. Is we're big on family dinners, and
Yeah.
when we can, with high school
Hmm.
schedules and middle school schedules. I don't know that we've had one this week, to be honest.
Right.
It's Thursday, but I have it on the calendar for tonight. I'm like, okay, well, we actually, though, it's not going to work because the high schoolers game got moved to tonight.
No.
You just like, you got to
Yeah.
flex with it. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like, I think our boys are very familiar with us all being around the table
Yeah.
and sitting and talking. This isn't just like a meal. This is a time together. And because it's important to my extended family and Bruce's extended family, they've experienced that. But whatever your thing is, like it
Yeah.
may be like sports or everything, or it may
Yeah.
be reading books. A mom sent out an invite. She was like, hey, we love watching baseball, but how we watch it is we really watch it, and we might have a puzzle going, but everyone's quiet and we're watching it. I'm like, you know what? That's not going to work for our family. But if that's
Yeah.
how you do it, and you are inviting people in who do that similarly, fantastic. But just like know your people and what matters to
Yeah.
you, and that's my biggest tip on intentionality.
I agree. I did this, the whole, I love that. It's the shared experience you're all having together, whatever, again, whether it's watching baseball or a family meal or whatever it may be. So I like that. And I like that. The fun connection, fun communication and creativity. Was that off the cuff or is that a thing? Like you
Well,
have
like
like
when we sat down and said, what is our family about? Those are the things
those
that
three.
kind of popped up that we realized if we put time and energy towards, that's what we put.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Heather, thank you. I want people to go to heathermacfadyen.com. We'll put all this in the show notes. Please listen to Don't Mom Alone podcast. By the way, I got more from when we were on Don't Mom Alone. I had more texts from people said, "Oh my gosh, I heard you on Heather's podcast." That of all of the ones we've been on, that was the number one. You have a
Okay.
great listener base.
They're so
Um,
kind. Yeah.
well,
Mhm.
that was by far the most. Go get Don't Mom Alone, the book, and Right Where You Belong, the book that came out earlier this year. Heather, I'm so grateful for your message, for your work. I'm excited for people to hear this, moms in all stages, where they can relieve that pressure to eliminate some of those isolating ideas, replace them with truths. So thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you for hanging out with us for a little bit.
Well, thank you for having me very
All right.
much. privilege.